Hey, I'm Johnny Drive-By. Why don't you turn your dial to the Atheist Edge?
Atheist Edge. I'm Jim. I'm here with John Loftus.
Hi, bud.
Yeah, all right. Wow. Last night was the book club meeting. It's already in our library. Go back and look at that. Travis Dickinson was here. He's a doctor of apologetics here in a local theological seminary. One of your problems that I overheard you talking about was that, and it wasn't just here, but it happens other places where they don't know. You're like a loose cannon, something of a firebrand, and they purposely pair you up with a Christian to kind of keep you in line, to kind of keep the muzzle on you a little bit.
It happens.
A
lot.
Yeah, you contend.
The Christians do.
Yeah,
a lot. Yeah. They don't want to just have me. The Unbelievable Show. I've been on there 2 or 3 times.
Justin Brierley.
He tends to do that anyway. I suppose it's not unlike him, but they just like to have somebody pairing me up with somebody who apparently is my equal or supposedly so.
Now, we did your book here at the book club, what was it, Chris, 2 or 3 months ago? Maybe more? And that was via Skype, but that was a one-on-one, so we did that.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. A lot of times, they got to pair you up with a Christian to just keep you from talking the entire time. They're very hesitant to just put you in the seat.
Well, maybe. I mean, I'm just putting it out as a suggestion. But I do know this. When I do encounter Christians who want to talk with me, scholars to people on the street, I've got more to teach them than they could possibly teach me. I mean, truly, when it comes to significant issues that are a matter of their faith. Now that sounds arrogant, but I haven't met one yet that knows the things that I know. The sum total of it. So they would rather monopolize the conversation by telling me things I already know.
It's not arrogant if it's true.
They would. Well, that's true. Like if I had a half an hour conversation with somebody, they'd want to spend 20 minutes doing all the talking, and okay, I'm listening. What do you think? Well, blah, 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 yeah. So if they're not, just the very conversation itself and how it goes, it tells me they're not interested in doing anything but, maybe venting to me or maybe
proselytizing,
like as if I hadn't heard this before. When I'm listening to that and I say, yeah, that comes right out of Geisler. Okay, that comes out of William Lane Craig. Okay, that comes out of Frank Turk. It's like I know where they've read it. I mean, I'm guessing. That's a pretty good clue because I've been reading these books longer than some of them have been alive. Because I'm old enough. And I'll say, yeah, I remember first reading that there, first reading it there. And I think I'm thinking about the book too. It's like, oh yeah, apologetics. That's Geisler. So and I could have told them that too, but they're not going to give me the time to tell them what I know because they don't want to know what I know. I'm serious.
It's either I don't know. I might give them the benefit of the doubt. Worst case scenario, they're just running out the clock on you a little bit, or
they don't really want to talk.
Yeah, they just want to limit your amount of talk time, or they're still in pulpit mode. They're in preacher mode. They're not talking to you. They're talking through you to another audience. So they know you already know this, but they're acting like they're saying it to you. They're actually throwing it out there to their audience.
Well, I mean, it takes a long time to convince somebody that you haven't told me anything significant I haven't already considered.
They have to know you already know that stuff.
No, they don't. Apparently they don't. They don't, when they have these conversations. Like Travis, he had read 3 chapters in The Christian Delusion. That's all he'd read in my work. I asked him, I said, do you read anything else? No. So it takes a long time before someone realizes, well, you know what? He knows these arguments just as well as I do, and they call it steel manning, right, And I do know your arguments. I could tell you what they are better than you could. Sometimes, not all the time. It takes a long time for them to say, oh, you know what? Maybe we should let him talk more if they're interested. Like for instance, Travis, he doesn't know what pragmatism is. I tried to explain it, but it's all too brief. It truly is the position that all positions have problems and all positions could possibly be wrong. So the best alternative is to go with sufficient objective evidence for what you believe. It truly is. And I talked with John Shook, who's one of the leading experts on pragmatism. He's a friend of mine, and he confirms that's what it is. The only time they ever used the word works, like do what works, was one time, and it was just trying to explain that position. So pragmatism, you could call it a relativism, but what it says is that it's possible that things could be all relative, so the only option at that point is to look for the sufficient objective evidence, and that works. I mean, it works to get to the truth,
right?
Like nothing else. It's surprising how good it is at getting to the truth of things. So pragmatism is my view, and to call it a relativism and to dismiss it as much and as quickly as he did in his book stuns me. He needs a good lesson on what that is and why it still works. Why it's still helpful, and why his view is just as relativistic as others. We're born into a culture. We're born with the brains we have, and there's so much that could be wrong of what we believe. So if you are willing to grant that, then the next question is, what's the best way out of the morass? What's the best way out of that? And the pragmatist will say look for sufficient objective evidence about the nature of nature, its origins, and other things, and I throw in, which is true as well, which religion is true.
Last night, there was an eruption of laughter where they thought they had you on the ropes because you said probably, and you said definitely. You remember that?
I might have said certainty. Yeah,
certain.
sorry.
You were certain about something. They said, "How certain are you that you know that?" And then you went probably, and then they laughed.
Well, it was a gaffe. We were throwing the word certainty around last night a lot. I mentioned that several times when I mentioned why I didn't agree with Mark Ehrman's book. Does Jesus exist? I think it's the name of it. And I mentioned that the string of certainties 2 or 3 times during the night. So I guess the word was on my lips. But you can be virtually certain that the Gospel of John was not written by John the Apostle, because the Gospel of John was a number of reasons, but calls the Jews, your father is the devil, and you are liars like him, and very negative, not just about the Pharisees, not just about the Sadducees, not just about the hierarchy at all, but the Jews as a whole. That's where anti-Semitism started right there.
Yes,
in John's Gospel, but Matthew before him, when the Gospel says that the people cried out, "May His blood be upon us and our children." So
Mel Gibson took that to a whole different level in his movie, right?
yeah. So for a Jew to write an anti-Semitic book just isn't something you would do. I mean, you just wouldn't do. So
Let me bounce this off of you. As far as evaluating the certainty of truths, I consider there being a historical truth in history and truth in scientific reality. We can scientifically measure what this table is made of, and that certainty is going to be much higher in itself, much higher probability of accuracy than any historical, even yesterday, or Abraham Lincoln, or John F. Kennedy. Because historical is a varying scale of probability.
it is.
So when we get 2,000 years ago to Jesus, we're just talking probabilities no matter what, right?
We when it comes to history, we're just talking about probabilities, and it's quite possible that you go back before photographs and video. You go back into the print age, and certain of those eras, certain of the 100 years period here, 50 years period there, you might have the highest degree of probability you could have when writing a history of certain periods in the past might be 20% probable, and that's all you got. That's how history works. That might be the highest probabilities you can get, and that's all you got. But you have to go with what you got because you got nothing else to go on, and that is it's 20% probable that this happened.
Yeah.
And you got to admit that that's the case.
Right.
Other cases might be 80%. But it's hard to do anything more than that in history. And that's just history. That's mundane history. That's ordinary history. For some eras, all we have are coins. All we have might be a destroyed castle. We don't have it. we have to construct who these people were and what they were, and that's just the nature of the ordinary events. Now throw on top of it, somebody levitated and said hello to the whole world and whatever. This multiplied by the thousands. So if let's say you got a period of history that, at best you get 20% probable, because so many things could have happened and transpired that you just have no idea. I mean, there's no archaeological digs that might show anything about it. Well, then add to it a resurrection. It's abysmally improbable.
Last night, both sides agreed that a miracle, by its very definition, is the least probable explanation for any type of phenomenon. They even agreed with that. But then their contention was that doesn't mean you can't dismiss that as an option.
Oh, no.
And so this was another time I wanted to chime in, but people were just asking so many questions. 1917, in Fatima, Portugal, over 50,000 people eyewitness claims that were in newspapers the next day, claimed that the sun started dancing around the sky, zigzagged, dipped down, melted part of the city, and the Virgin Mary appeared inside of it. Over 50,000 people. Let me
guess, they were Catholics.
Of course, yeah, Portugal, I'm sure it was. 1917 had to be. The Hindu milk miracle, all these, Sai Baba in India, who claimed to be a god even before he died. All these people that claim to have witnessed, eyewitness claims.
Let's go.
How fallible?
Let's go to the Portugal incident.
Yeah, Fatima.
Okay? Fatima.
Yeah.
Okay, so 50,000, right?
At least.
Now,
all the newspapers covered it.
this is the first time all the newspapers. How many newspapers were there?
It caught on. It's 1917,
Okay,
but
so
the word spread. It was all
right, so
Brazil, all of South America was printing it.
There's an original source then, right? There's one newspaper who covered it, correct?
I see where you're going.
Right?
Yep.
One. Written by how many people?
I see where you're going.
Written by one reporter.
You sure?
And he's speaking for 50,000 people. He or she is.
What
right?
does that sound a lot like?
Did he interview them? I mean, how does he tell how he heard this?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm sure he had to have gotten some
Did
interviews.
they see the same thing?
I
mean, there wasn't a doubter among them. He'd have to.
So there's cognitive. There's confirmation bias because they're only interviewing the ones that claim to have saw it.
All we know, David Hume would say, is that the laws of nature aren't violated. They just aren't. I mean, when it comes to eyewitness testimony, because on the one hand you have the sun rising and setting for millions and billions of years, right? I assume, and I'm not just assuming. The weight of probability is that the sun has been up and down, up and down, up and down, and never do we see any astronomer in history saying otherwise. Now they try to make that out of the Bethlehem star, but that's even there. They don't say that the sun acted erratically, and I think the Bible talks about the sun acting erratically, but that's the thing, the very thing we're trying to question here.
Right.
So so the sun, we're pretty damn sure that the sun didn't do that. Now on the other hand, you have this newspaper report. Now you don't have 50,000 people; you have a newspaper report, and he may have interviewed 2 or 3 people. Yeah, we saw it. How many? I want to read the newspaper report myself. I want to do some investigation, and I don't think I'm going to come to the same conclusion.
It's just like you were talking to Chris in another episode about the Book of Mormon. You open up, before even chapter 1, you open up to the leaflet on the inside, and it lists, 17 eyewitnesses, claimed eyewitnesses, most of which their last name suspiciously ends in Smith. I'm sure they were all family members, right?
I think 11, yeah. Some of them were family members, benefactors, and
some since recanted.
Some of them recanted.
At least one said that he was coached by Joseph Smith before he was given he gave his testimony. So here's these eyewitnesses. And the other thing, where I thought you were going to take us down this parallel is, you said in Fatima there was the one journalist interviewing maybe a couple people, saying that 50,000 people saw it. It reminded me of the Bible, of course. What is it? Well, one anonymous author writing on behalf of the person he's talking about in the Bible.
You're talking about 500 witnesses.
The 500 witnesses. That wasn't 500 witnesses. That was one person talking about 500 witnesses.
And we don't. That's right. And that person himself doesn't say he was an eyewitness of the 500 who saw them. He still was not there. He's reporting people who said they saw Jesus, or he's reporting that he heard they said they saw
The
Jesus.
best parallel would be that journalist wasn't even in Fatima. He showed up and say the next morning, and then he started saying, oh yeah, 50,000 people say that.
Let's grant him 1,000 people. I mean, let's grant him 1,000 people. Then I'm going to ask, what were they smoking? I mean, why isn't that a legitimate question?
That's not an ad hoc hypothesis.
What about sleep deprivation? I mean, like, were you guys standing out in that field for days at a time? Now, these are questions that probably are answered. I just don't know them, but these are the questions I would answer. Sleep deprivation can make you see things. And if you've ever been in a religious meeting where people are whipped into a frenzy, like Benny Hinn, who had things in his audiences, he'll throw his coat around, and all of a sudden people will fall over, and the Holy Spirit's coming your way, and all of a sudden they fall, and they
That's
act,
peer pressure.
They act as if they actually were hit by the Holy Spirit
Because they see they
right.
know everyone's watching them.
So
It's like these stage hypnotists. You know, when you're up on stage, you tend to do things you wouldn't normally do because you know thousands of people are watching you.
I agree.
So you're going to act hypnotized even if you're not.
I agree. I don't think I'm susceptible to being hypnotized because I'm not going to play along.
Exactly.
I mean, I've never been, nobody's ever tried that, but I would welcome it. I'm not going to play along, though.
I'm very skeptical of hypnotism still.
So, so Hume would say, David Hume would say, okay, now we have this universal testimony that the sun doesn't act erratically. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down, and down. Universal. Except for, the Bible would mention that, or maybe the 50,000, right? So we have to factor that in, and we have to look at what, like I just said, we have to ask questions about the reports, because we have a very strong opinion of the sun's activities. Now here's what he'd say. Now if the testimony were ever enough to match the evidence from science, that the sun doesn't act erratically. If the evidence ever rose high enough from testimony to equal that of the sun, then at that point, the best we can do is simply suspend judgment. He said, because that testimony can never rise above the probabilities of the sun acting like that. Because these are laws of nature.
We're just off pure testimony. No, it cannot.
Now, so what we need besides mere testimony is objective evidence. Was there an astronomer? Did you take a picture of it? Why not? I mean, was there a plane up in the air? No, it wouldn't have been back in those days, but I'm sure there was.
That was the year that planes first went in the air.
I just thought about that.
I just thought of that.
So, I mean, if there was we need more than just human testimony, because we just do. We need objective evidence, because testimony alone can only equal the evidence of the sun's activity. What you need to go beyond to raise it above, they say this is more probable than that, would have to be objective evidence. We don't have any of that.
Let's give them 50,000 people, and let's say some weren't even there, and they're just playing bandwagon, and they're just, because my parents saw it, and I saw it too. Let's say there is a large core group of people that really thought they saw something. Wouldn't that tend to make you think that at least, at minimum, some meteorological incident happened?
Yeah, it could be that.
It had to have been based on some sort of truth.
That's another option, right? People were wondering about time travel. Maybe somebody was busting through time at that very moment. I mean, there are other natural...
And that's still more probable of an explanation than a miracle.
It is.
By definition.
It is.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not willing to give them 50,000. Not until I talk to each one of them and ask them what you saw, and then judge their credibility as far as do you like evidence? Are you one who is evidence-minded?